Hello, and welcome to Education International's tribute to teachers and school staff on this World Teachers Day. I am David Edwards, the General Secretary of Education International, and together we will honor and pay tribute to the teachers we have lost during the COVID pandemic. We will celebrate their lives and legacy and recommit to making safe working conditions and vaccine equity a reality for all across the globe. We know that many of you are also organizing and taking part in events all week to commemorate World Teachers Day. Under the banner, we agreed with UNESCO, ILO, and UNICEF, Teachers at the Heart of Educational Recovery. But we simply felt that in addition to these events, and as the news was pouring in over the last 18 months of the steady and increasing losses in one and then another country, we just needed to pause, as these are not numbers. They're human beings who lost their lives in service to their students and colleagues doing that which mattered most. The vast majority of them were unvaccinated, despite our demands to vaccinate all teachers. Many of them and many of their colleagues still are teaching under very difficult conditions. We pay tribute to them by continuing to fight for better, safer, and more dignified conditions that befit the people who teach the future. We pay tribute to their legacy as part of this whole, which truly is greater than the sum of its individual parts. In many countries, when you are at a school or union gathering or event and you name a teacher, leader, colleague that is no longer with us, the response is presente, present. When we pay tribute to the gift that their lives and their contributions have made, we say the present. We continue onwards, building on that contribution, remembering what we have learned from them and moving forward. Lean on Me is a great song to get us started. It talks about leaning on each other to get through the hard times. And it talks about going forward together, about being present for one another. We will share this journey around the world with two just wonderful colleagues who are present with us right now. Joining us from Ciudad Juarez in Mexico is Lily Eskelsen Garcia, and from Dakar, Senegal, Mariam Sako Dansako. Hello to both of you.
Hello.
Presente.
To honor our colleagues around the world, we have launched a memorial website. It's the teachercovidmemorial.org. And the website gathers profiles from teachers and school staff who have died during the COVID pandemic. Each one represents an incredible loss to their families, our schools, and our communities. Please take a look. Very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Very important minute that's going to be a minute of silence all over the world, this World Teachers Day. But again, I want to come back to Lily and Mariam, welcome them to being with us. And I'd like to actually give the floor to you, Lily.
Oh, thank you, David. And shame on you for putting me on right after looking at those beautiful pictures. And I want to thank all of our colleagues today. World Teacher Day, I will get through this. World Teacher Day it's a celebration, of course. It's always been a day to celebrate our pride and courage and the recognition of a teacher's worth in the world. And this celebration is going to be different right now. A celebration of all those lives so well lived and so sadly and tragically lost in this pandemic. But ignore the tears for a minute, because it's still a celebration, because we are here. We are so proud of their courage, and we are here to lift them up so high that the world will see what we see. They'll recognize the priceless gift that they gave to the world every day as educators and as activists. By knowing the stories that you're gonna see in the next little while, we can recommit ourselves to continuing the struggle, the glorious goal of education for who? Education for all. That we build something around all our students, that we build a dream of all so strong that it becomes a reality. But we're going to pause today. We're going to take a breath to remember our colleagues, our friends who've left us. The magnitude of this loss is incomprehensible, but we have to continue to hold them in their hearts. Right now, I'm thinking of people that I knew who are no longer here. I know their stories, and those stories inspire us to act. There's so much to do, and our challenges have never been greater. But in this dark sorrow that we're feeling, we're going to see a light that will lead us forward. We will not let their memories fade. And I know I said that we were here to lift them up, but truly, it's their memories and their stories that lift us and show us the way. There is absolutely no country left untouched by this deadly pandemic. At Education International, our affiliates across the globe have sent in stories of their colleagues who were struck down. Families have been devastated. Entire communities are in mourning because when a teacher dies, it's a death that touches generations within that community. Think of the hundreds and sometimes thousands of people whose lives were touched by one single teacher. Students across years, across families, brothers and sisters who had the same teacher. Educators lose their friends. They lose someone they love, and they lose someone who loved them, who was part of molding their lives in profound ways. And in this pandemic, time and again, we've heard different voices, different languages, different places, but we've heard those communities, the public, saying the same thing, saying, we'd forgotten how much a teacher does, not just inside, but also outside the classroom. How important that human relationship between teacher and student is, how much a teacher means to a community. We've heard people say we've forgotten how selfless teachers are, how creative, how loving. And this I know, the lives of the colleagues we lost have helped the public appreciate the work of those of us who remain. That's what a powerful story of love and sacrifice can do. It can help people see what's real and what's important. David, I'm so proud to be here today. Sorry about all this.
Not at all. No need to be sorry at all. I think you really said it beautifully. It's about just how irreplaceable these lives are and have been, and very, very touching. Thank you very much for those words. I'd like to now hand the floor over to Maryam to share a few words with us.
Merci beaucoup, chers collègues. David, Lily, vous avez raison. Nous avons toujours commémoré le 5 octobre, Journée mondiale des enseignants, pour célébrer les enseignants, enseignantes et personnels de l'éducation que nous sommes. En 2020, le contexte de pandémie nous a
In this
inspirés.
context of pandemics,
Nous
we
l'avons
were
célébré d'une
inspired.
façon inédite.
We celebrated
Un tour du
in a
monde
different way.
époustouflant en
So
24
we
heures.
had a journey around
Mais
the
cette
world
année
in
2021,
24 hours, but this year,
nous la
2021,
voulons encore plus particulière,
it's even more
avec
particular this year.
une dimension marquée par la tristesse.
We were touched by
La tristesse d'avoir perdu
sadness. We are sad because
beaucoup de
we
nos collègues
lost
et
many
camarades
of our colleagues
dans
and
cette
comrades,
pandémie de
colleagues
COVID-19.
in this COVID-19 pandemics.
La Journée mondiale des enseignants
The
2021
World
est
Day of
célébrée
Teacher this
en
year
l'honneur de ces vaillants soldats
celebrated as a tribute
de
to those
l'éducation,
brave
tombés
soldiers
l'arme à
of
la main.
education. They fell weapons in
Et
their
nous
hands.
pouvons dire,
And we can say,
comme on a l'habitude de le dire pour
as
les
we
femmes qui
used
meurent en
to
couche,
say for
qu'elles ont
women
perdu la vie en donnant la vie.
dying while giving
Nous
birth
pouvons
to their
dire également
babies,
que nos collègues
I
ont
think our
perdu la
colleagues
vie
lost their
en donnant la
lives
vie, ou tout au moins un
by
sens à la
giving
vie. Car c'est quoi
birth at the same time and giving a
une vie
meaning
sans
to life.
éducation?
Because what is life if there's no education?
Je pense que c'est pour tout cela
I
que
think
nous leur
for all
rendons
those
hommage,
reasons we have to pay
ces braves
tribute
soldats de
today
l'éducation, et
to
pour ne
these
pas dire du
brave
développement,
soldiers of education,
engagés,
of development,
déterminés.
those
Ils ont
people who were
bravé
so committed.
l'insécurité sanitaire
They faced health
à l'école,
insecurity
dans les transports,
at school, in
pour
transport,
assurer la continuité de l'éducation.
to make sure they could give
Ils ont
education,
bravé tout
continue their
cela
work. So they face
pour
all the
qu'aucun enfant ne
obstacles
soit laissé en
so that
rade.
no child was left
Ils y
aside.
sont allés avec le cœur,
They went to work
dans la
with their
dignité, par
heart,
tous les moyens
in dignity,
et au
by
prix de leur
every
vie.
possible mean, risking their
Nous leur
lives.
devons respect.
We owe them respect.
Les enseignants perdus
We
pendant
lost
cette longue crise de
teachers during
COVID-19,
this COVID crisis,
leur perte ne sera pas vaine
but they didn't die in vain.
parce que tout simplement,
Just
ils ont donné leur
because
vie
they gave their lives
pour que les disparités criardes dans l'éducation
so that
disparaissent.
discrepancies
Nous
in
le savons.
education could
Les
disappear. We
mesures
know it.
alternatives pour continuer l'éducation ne pouvaient
Alternative measures
atteindre
taken
tous ces enfants dans
to,
les zones reculées où il n'y a pas d'électricité, où il n'y a pas de
to have
connectivité,
classes. Those measures
où
were very
les enfants
difficult
n'ont
in
pas le
some
moyen
areas where
d'avoir
there's no internet, there's no
l'ordinateur.
connection, there's no computer, there's no
La mort de
electricity.
nos collègues a
Our
un
colleagues
impact
died,
dévastateur
and it has a
pour leurs familles,
devastating effect
pour
on
leurs
their
élèves,
families,
pour leur communauté,
on their pupils
dans
and
leur rôle
communities,
et les attentes de la société
because society expected
sont
a
importantes
lot from those teachers.
envers eux. Et pourtant, la considération
However,
due à leur égard
they are
laisse
not
à désirer.
always well considered or not considered as well
Nous,
as they
leurs
should.
collègues,
We
nous
are
mesurons à
the
leur
colleagues,
juste valeur
and
leur
we
engagement,
measure
les
their
services rendus
commitment,
à leur pays, au
the
monde,
service they
les
gave
sacrifices
to the
consentis,
countries.
et nous
We
nous
know
engageons
about
à
their
poursuivre le combat.
sacrifices, and we commit ourselves
Le
to
combat pour
follow the
l'amélioration des
struggle,
conditions de
struggle
travail,
to improve
le combat
working
pour
conditions,
la revalorisation
struggle to give
de la
more
profession
value
enseignante.
to our profession.
Pour leur mémoire,
We want
nous
to
poursuivrons le combat
keep in mind
pour que
those struggles
l'éducation de qualité
so
pour
that we
tous
have equality
puisse être
education
assurée,
for everybody,
même en temps de crise.
even in times of
Nous
crisis.
espérons que la COVID-19 aura pour
We
effet
hope that
d'impulser
COVID-19
un
will
nouvel
have
élan
as a consequence
pour des
a
systèmes
new
éducatifs
impetus
plus performants
in educational system
où
so
tous
that
les
are
acteurs,
better and more performing,
notamment les
where all the
enseignants et leurs
stakeholders,
syndicats,
teachers,
seront
trade
impliqués et
unions
auront leur mot à
will
dire.
have their word and will be
Merci
heard
à
too.
l'International
Thank
de
you
l'Éducation
to the International
d'avoir
Education.
pensé
Thank
à
you
tous ces
for
milliers
organizing this
d'enseignants,
tribute. Thank
collègues,
you
amis
for thinking of the
disparus pendant
thousands and
cette crise.
thousands of
Merci
disappeared colleagues. Thank you very much.
Merci à vous, Mariam,
Thank you, Mariam.
those-
Thank you, Mariam.
those really touching words. Colleagues, one country that has suffered tremendous losses during the pandemic has been India. Tens of thousands of teachers and school staff have died across the country. Many because they were forced to help organize elections in the middle of a global pandemic with little to no personal protective equipment. They are not forgotten. Their bereaved families, communities, and unions are not alone in mourning their passing. The global education movement stands with them. So in memory of the Indian educators we have lost, here is an original film honoring their lives, story, and legacy. Please watch.
संपूर्ण देश में संपूर्ण लॉकडाउन होने जा रहा है.
Good morning, everyone. We all are facing a difficult time, but we cannot compromise with our students' future. So, I think we should start with online classes. Thank you.
मेरे जुगनू और भी चमको.
Good morning, class. Good morning. Good morning, Smriti. Okay. Am I audible? Huh? Okay. So let's begin with our lesson. Don't worry. I shall make this interesting. Okay, children. Let's do something new.
बना दूं क्या. तुम मेरी परछाई हो, तुम मेरे हमसफर भी. कभी कभी तुम नीम हो, कभी कभी शक्कर भी. खेल खेल में सुलझा लेंगे हर उलझन को. 2 और 2 को 5 करना सिखा दूं क्या. मेरे जुगनू और भी चमको टिम टिम कर. बोतलों में बंद करके सूरज बना दूं क्या.
Everything fine, ma'am?
Yeah, I'm fine.
मुझे ढूंढते हो, कहाँ खोजते हो. मैं तुमसे अलग कब हुई.
जिन गुरुओं ने हर हालात में अपने स्टूडेंट्स का साथ नहीं छोड़ा, यहाँ तक कि शिक्षा की ज्योत जगाए रखने के लिए अपने जीवन का बलिदान दिया, उन गुरुओं को पूरे जहां ने नमन किया।
During this terrible time, we lost not only teachers and education support personnel, we also lost union colleagues. They worked in union secretariats and they led projects that further our causes and promote our values. Robert Kunsinze was one of these great people. As a program manager at the Uganda National Teachers Union, Robert was a champion of both teachers and students. He spearheaded the union's projects against child labor, and he helped countless children continue their education. His union's general secretary, Baguma Filbert Bates, will tell us more about Robert's work and his priceless legacy.
COVID-19 pandemic came with a lot of issues, and as a teaching fraternity, we were hard hit. UNATU as an institution lost one of its senior officers, Mr. Robert Gunsinze, who was our programs manager. He succumbed to COVID-19 on the 18th of June this year. We shall miss him because he had gathered a lot of experience in program work, and he was running so many projects of the institution. So we shall miss him, we shall miss his expertise, but we think he is in safe hands as believers. Yeah, Robert joined this union around 2012. That's when he started working with UNATU as a program officer. So he rose through ranks until he became a programs manager at the time of his death.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Gunsinze Robert. I'm the programs manager, Uganda National Teachers Union.
Robert was in charge of implementing the union programs. He would take the lead and others, of course, would join him, but basically he was the key person in the program implementation. Robert started working on some of the programs, but specifically the child labor projects. At the time of his death, we were having child labor projects in different areas, in Karamoja, in the districts of Moroto and Nakapiripiriti, under work No Child's Business. We had Zombo and Nebi, where we are running child labor projects, and that is out of work to school. Then Entebbe municipality, where we have still a project on child labor, and he was now planning to commence one in Masaka. We condole with the family members, the wife and children. We thank God the wife has recovered and the children, and therefore we put them in the hands of God and call upon all other friends of Uganda National Teachers Union to come to support the family of the late Robert Gunsinze, because the family needs support, especially at this critical time. We want to thank the international community, because when they got to know the sad news, they mobilized themselves, and in the final steps of putting up a fund that will help Robert's children, especially on their education. We want to thank them for that big heart, for coming to the rescue of the innocent children who were left by the father at a very tender age. So we want to thank them and encourage them to continue with that heart, because it is said that the hand that gives is the hand that receives. We pray that God rests the soul of Robert in eternal life. Yeah, I remain Baguma Philbert Bates, the General Secretary, Uganda National Teachers Union, here in Uganda.
Thank you, Philbert. While we have all been facing the same storm, we have to admit we are navigating it in very different boats. In Paraguay, teachers have had to face particularly harsh conditions. Our colleagues from the Unión Nacional de Educadores will now share their story of the pandemic. And it's a story about teachers, about how they managed to keep education going at great personal cost and despite all odds. But it is also a story of loss and a tribute to the many educators and union leaders who have passed away and the legacy that they leave behind.
El impacto de la pandemia a nivel mundial, así como en la República del Paraguay.
The impact of the pandemic in Paraguay has been devastating for all the population. It has hit particularly hard education in two different ways. First of all, it made all the education shortages very visible in terms of infrastructure and also in terms of a lack of necessary skills in order to implement education or online education. When we heard about the pandemic abroad, we thought that this was so distant, but it was never going to reach our shores. But in a split second, when we least expected it, we were closing down schools, we were going into quarantines, and our lives changed radically. Teachers, apart from sustaining education in Paraguay, they also had to spend out of their pockets, they had to spend money to buy the necessary devices and also to acquire the new skills. I think this is an eternal debt. I believe that teachers had to make a superhuman effort in order to reach very distant places. As we know, we have very low connectivity in Paraguay. We're not used to working with technologies. And we don't have a lot of experience in distant teaching. Well, we always found ways to make photocopies and send them to students. There were places in the hinterland, in the rural areas, where there was no internet signal or only at certain times of the day. And some of the teachers would wake up in the middle of the night, would climb up a tree to pick up the signal, make a recording and send it to the students. So Paraguayan teachers spared no efforts. We have suffered the consequences of this invisible problem. It was impossible to fight it, and it has taken a severe toll in terms of lives, and we lament the death of many teachers who lost their lives to this pandemic. The most painful aspect of this whole thing is the loss of many teachers, many colleagues, not just in our organization, but at a national level. We have lost working colleagues. In my school, I lost 3 working colleagues, including my principal. Our trade union, UNE, has been hardly hit by this pandemic. We lost Lázaro Rojas, a founding member of the organization, who managed to strengthen this organization with his leadership. He has been Secretary General on 2 occasions, and he has left indelible marks in the life of our union. Lázaro Rojas, founding member of our trade union, the mentor of our organization. We owe him our leadership because he didn't just work towards the consolidation of this organization, he also worked so that the people that were working side by side with him could acquire leadership skills, that kind of solidarity and accompaniment in most difficult moments right at the beginning of the organization was really key. We didn't have enough resources, and we are also coming out of a very harsh dictatorship when our trade union was being founded. And he managed to convey his courage to all our colleagues. He managed to convey that strength to consolidate a trade union, an organization which is really big in Paraguay and has worldwide recognition. He left us a very important learning for all the trade union members in Paraguay. He was the main ideologist in our organization. I remember that he wanted to create a cooperative radio, and they became a reality. He was also a social fighter, and he was the initiator of so many things. So when I think of Lázaro, I think of him as a big teacher, not just as a trade union or as a social leader. He was a teacher, a university professor of history. He also taught at secondary level, and he did a lot for education in Paraguay and for social struggles. I know Lázaro right from the foundation of the organization. He always defended the rights of his colleagues. I remember that there was a training not so long ago when I realized that Lázaro set up more than half of a grassroots committees which are members of our trade union. And I believe that everything we have now is partly the result of the work of these 2 colleagues, Lázaro and Marta. The other colleague, Marta Figueredo, also a historic leader of our organization, has also been hit by the pandemic. Also, her husband lost his life, and it has been really very sad because she was a very charismatic leader. All her colleagues held her in very high esteem, and she was fulfilling an almost irreplaceable role within the organization. Marta, our sister colleague, was living 70 kilometers away from Asunción, capital city. But she was one of the most dynamic leaders because those 70 kilometers were no obstacle for her. He was always the first union leader to arrive at the trade union headquarters to attend to the matters that were dealt with in her secretariat, labor matters and grievances. She was a restless mother, a fighter, a fighting woman, and right from the beginning, in her organization, she has always helped her colleagues. She always had a smile on her face, and she knew how to help all her colleagues who had some kind of issue or problem. Very few people will be able to do what Marta did in the organization.
Ese espíritu, esa pasión, ese compromiso que ella demostró siempre a la organización. A veces había días en que las 10, las 11 de la noche
was almost incredible. Sometimes she was in the capital city until 10 or 11 in the evening, and then she commuted back to her town. That's what she did every day. She spared no efforts. She didn't mind whether it was raining, whether it was particularly hot. She made all sorts of sacrifices because she was fully committed with the organization. She was always in the trenches.
Eternamente agradecidas.
We will always be indebted to her for everything that she did for the organization, but also everything she did for education in Paraguay. Over and above the pandemic, has hit very hard education in Paraguay, which is a country where salaries and living conditions are quite low. What we're trying to do in our trade union is to rise up from the ashes to achieve new triumphs for our members. Right now, we're working towards improving the profession status in Paraguay. We're honored to lead this very important process for education workers in Paraguay, because we would be making a very important headway as teachers would be properly recognized from an economic and a social point of view. And social recognition is really key to improve the personal life of all education staff. And all education staff will find the proper recognition.
Just remembering back to when I received a letter from the Paraguayan Teachers Union, shared it with, actually it was the G20 talking about the vaccine shortage that was happening globally, when they were told the names of about 300 Paraguayan teachers that they had just lost in the last several months. So this is a country that has really suffered tremendous loss, and so we want to thank them for sharing that video. Colleagues, COVID-19 has brought about a truly unprecedented global crisis. In some places, COVID is just the latest crisis, crashing down on top of many other crises. Palestine is one of those places. Despite the terrible circumstances, teachers in Palestine continue to persevere and provide education to their students. Here we have a message from our colleagues from the General Union of Palestinian Teachers. Please watch.
My name is Iman Shayib. I am a member of the General Secretariat at the GUT, and I am the chair of the Women's Committee at the GUT. The Palestinian teachers during the last 2 years are suffering from the corona pandemic, which put other burdens on them. They were forced to use the e-learning education while there is a shortage of training and there is lack of equipment at schools, such as computers, laptops, and high-speed internet, because the Ministry of Education couldn't provide this equipment for them, which made it difficult for teachers to do their jobs properly. The situation was even more difficult for the female teachers, because they have to do many jobs at the same time. They have to take care of their children, and they have to teach their students online. They have also to apply the healthy protocol at homes and at schools without any increase in their salaries. On the contrary, they didn't receive their full salaries. that's, as we said before, because of the bad financial situation the Palestinian Authority goes through. The Palestinian teachers still live under the same condition until the moment, unfortunately. All these reasons together have affected the quality of education in Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you. Every country has had a different experience with COVID, but there are lessons that the pandemic has taught us all. Stories we need to tell and things we need to change going forward. Our president, Susan Hopgood, is here now to share some of those important insights and to tell us what is at stake now for communities everywhere. Susan?
There never has been a World Teachers' Day like this. Never has there been such a combined sense of accomplishment and uncertainty, of sorrow and optimism weighing on our hearts and on our mission as teachers. For yet another year, educators have been present, adapting and improvising at the classroom and community level, working through their unions to forge and direct policies at the systems level, and managing the personal challenges unique to so many frontline workers. Too often, these challenges have been deadly. So many teachers lost their lives this year in the pandemic. So many mothers and fathers. So many sons and daughters. Because teachers are so much a part of our communities, so present, their loss is keenly felt. Today, we honour many of these colleagues with a very moving tribute on the EI website. The link is below on your screen. One of the more permanent human truths is that we don't fully value what we have until it's gone. It applies to our teachers and to the very idea of education itself. The absence of in-person schooling in the pandemic created a void and delivered us an unmistakable lesson about the importance of teaching and the necessary structures and systems of education. The lesson was driven home by the maths of inequity, effective remote learning made impossible when 1/2 of the world has no internet. The loss of school-based nutrition in the context of historic and rising rates of global hunger, and the 11 million girls during COVID-19 who joined the already existing 130 million girls out of school and may never return. Through it all, teachers persisted and adapted and maintained our presence in classroom and the community. Likewise, our unions and allies and advocates have been clear about pushing forward on a comprehensive and sustainable path to recovery. We know there is no end to COVID-19 and no safe return to schools for all students without vaccine equity worldwide. As long as vaccine production falls short of meeting the global demand, we will continue to see new waves of the pandemic endanger the lives of our teachers and the future of our children. We know that countries where governments have engaged in meaningful social dialogue with unions have fared much better in the pandemic than countries where educators and their unions were not involved. We know that individuals make a difference in our time. Those on the front line, those in constant harm's way, who deserve our thanks and praise. But a sustainable future isn't the stuff of superheroes. It will be hard won by the collaborative work to build, operate and maintain systems, especially a public sector that has been dismantled and distorted in many nations by politics, by neglect, and now a pandemic. On this World Teachers' Day, teachers are present. We are standing with our troubled and anxious communities, and we are mobilised to make sure that the heart of any post-pandemic recovery is quality education for all. The future depends on it.
Thank you, Susan, as always. Very eloquent. Mariam, I thought you've been watching this and the previous messages. What are your thoughts you'd like to share?
Ouais, sentiment de tristesse, comme je disais tout à l'heure. Donc, des messages émouvants. des films qui montrent la réalité de l'éducation, les conditions d'enseignement, apprentissage, les difficultés que rencontrent nos collègues à travers le monde, l'impact de la COVID, beaucoup de choses
Just
qui
the
font
impact
dire
of
que
COVID.
le choix de Lean on Me
And you have chosen Lean on Me as a song. This is really appropriate. It's a call for solidarity,
que les unes et les autres puissent
so that
compter
everybody can
sur les uns et
rely
les autres
on the others
pour relever les défis. Un message
to
fort
achieve
de
all the
la
challenges.
présidente
So this is a
Suzanne,
strong message we got
qui
from
retrace
Suzanne,
tout
the
cela
president,
et la
the
nécessité
chairperson.
pour nous,
It
mouvement
shows the
syndical, de
necessity
savoir
for
que
us as a
notre
trade union
mouvement est
to know
essentiel
that we are
pour la
essential,
promotion de l'éducation
essential
et le
movement to
développement.
promote education and development.
Merci, David.
Thank you. Thank you,
Merci,
David.
Mariam.
Thank you,
Dr. Lily,
Mariam.
any reflections or thoughts?
So I started with all of these tears that I was not planning on, and I'm not getting any better. It's I know the names of the people who were my friends and colleagues who passed, and it's so real. It's so real. I appreciate all of our affiliates who said, we want to submit a tribute. We want people to know that these were lives that mattered and lives that were lost. And I always love hearing from Susan. She's always so steady and she never breaks down like I do. But she's focused and David, so are you. Our Education International leadership saying, and I like the way you said it, we're facing the same storm, but we're not all in the same boats. Some people are in battleships and some people are in little rubber rafts. And we have an obligation to make sure that we do something about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm thinking that now you may take us to do something about it and talk to a very good friend and colleague in South Africa. Is that correct?
Yes, we are going to South Africa, one of the countries hardest hit by the pandemic. So much of Africa in such need. And our vice president for the African region, General Secretary of South Africa, Democratic Teachers Union, but more important than all of those titles, my dear friend, mi hermano, Mgwena Maluleke, is going to pay tribute to the thousands of educators in Africa who have passed away. And he's going to look ahead at the change we need if we're going to make this world a place where students and educators everywhere can thrive. So let's listen to Mgwena's message.
We are celebrating this year's World Teachers' Day under a dark cloud of the devastating COVID-19 pandemic. In South Africa, 1,700 teachers lost their life within 6 months of the pandemic reaching our shores. Hundreds more continue to die. We have lost too many educators and education support personnel. They were teachers, nation builders, parents, confidants, carers to many of our children. To their families, they were fathers, mothers, sisters, nieces, nephews, breadwinners, leaders in their communities. SADC's commitment to the well-being of the teachers saw the union family putting abroad its demands for schools to meet the required safety standards before schools could be open. Being a teacher, though rewarding, can be stressful, exhausting, and frustrating. Waking up at the crack of dawn, having the patience of a saint, and being a positive influence is stressful work. Let's face it. As indicated by UNESCO, World Teachers' Day speaks to a massive token of the mindfulness comprehension, and thankfulness showed for the fundamental commitment that educators make in advancement by teaching. It sets standards regarding the rights and responsibilities of teachers to their initial preparation, further education, recruitment, employment, and learning conditions. With the creation of the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals for Education, World Teachers' Day is an annual reminder of this goal and the need to do more to encourage teachers to remain in education. We call upon governments to make teaching a profession of first choice for young people. Above all, we celebrate the work of dedicated teachers around the world who continue to strive every day to ensure that inclusive and equitable quality education and the promotion of lifelong learning opportunities for all become a reality in every corner of the globe.
Mgwena said, as teachers, we bear a great responsibility. Our work is helping children learn and grow and reach their full potential. We are friends, allies, and mentors with great influence over young minds. The bonds we build in our classrooms often last a lifetime. This is why the loss of so many teachers is especially heartbreaking for students. And as we mourn the loss of so many educators, we can find comfort in the fact that their spirit lives on in all those students they taught, motivated and inspired along their careers. Here is a reminder of this from students in Taiwan and Spain.
全世界的教师们好，我是中华民国全国教师会理事长侯俊良。疫情重创全球教育已超过1年半，面对起伏不定的病毒威胁，师生无不在于线上、实体教学间频频转换。全球许多教师在坚守教育岗位的过程中，不幸染疫离世，留给家人、学生、家长、教育界无限的追思与怀念。今年的世界教师日，让我们暂停一下脚步吧，悼念这些逝去的生命，向他们对全球教育的奉献致敬，为孩子喜忧的灵魂获得最真的喜悦，每份点燃孩子生命之光的教育精神永留人间。中华民国全国教师会身为代表台湾国际参与 EI 的教师专业组织，我们更期待未来教师工作环境、劳动条件、专业发展能获得持续提升。每年 EI、ILO、UNESCO 联合公布的全球教师社会地位报告都显示，教师专业要更多公共教育投资与专业支持，来充分发挥专业，让教育品质更好。这是每个教师最需要的教师节礼物。再也无法与大家共度2021年世界教师日的教师同仁们，我们愿意接下各位的棒子，延续那些未完成的教育旅程，让世界上更多孩子在优质教育环境中成为更好的一代公民。在天堂的老师们，虽然我们未曾相遇相识，但是我们想对您说，老师，您永远都在。
Hoy, 5 de octubre, Día Mundial del Docente, querría hacer un reconocimiento a todo el personal educativo que trabaja en los centros y mandar un recuerdo especial a todas las personas que han fallecido durante la pandemia. Hoy más que nunca, siempre presentes.
Hola Pilar, ¿has descansado? ¿Recuerdas? En la puerta de clase, mientras íbamos todos alborotados al
Hello Pilar, have you rested well? Remember, at the school gate we made our way to our desk and you always addressed us in the same way with a smile and enthusiastic "Good morning." Remember? You always started the day the same way. We waited in anticipation for that moment because it was the prelude to a historic event to be discovered. It was the moment before knowing the causes of the War of Independence or the first democratic constitution. Little by little you gained our trust because you cared about all of us. You did not hesitate to interrupt the class if you saw a student worried and disconnected from the explanations. You normally found a way to cheer him up, but you didn't mind turning to a colleague to use humor and get him back in the right mood. I have the feeling that I have not worked in any subject more than in yours, and I'm not the only one. We found out about the internet more than about Netflix series. We all made an effort in your subject to try to live up to the commitment that you demonstrated. Last week was the 1-year anniversary of your passing, and we gathered to pay tribute to you. What a great year we had with you in high school. Maite and Begonia, my lifelong friends, have just informed me that Rosa, the cleaner, has also passed away. She welcomed us every morning with a smile, in spite of having to clean our mess day after day. But Rosa is not the only one. Anna, the janitor, and Jaime, the clerk, have also passed away. I'm going to have to leave you. I have to rewrite the history notes from university. I think we discussed the Cadiz constitution today, but I can't really remember because my teacher, my professor, is actually quite boring, and that's normal. As my mother says, pearls like you are very, very difficult to come by. I hope that from wherever you are, you enjoy watching us become what we are. We will try to continue on the path that you taught us, the path of respect, solidarity, and justice. Thank you for everything, from me and from all the classmates who signed this letter. They are all waiting for you. Juan, Pedra, Sonia, and so on. All the classmates from the Pilar Álvarez Secondary School. All teachers, support staff, students and parents have decided to name our school after you. Farewell, Pilar. Today is World Teachers Day and we really miss you. You have taught so many people how to live, but you will always be with us. My name is Cristina del Valle, singer of the band Amistades Peligrosas. Today, on World Teachers Day, I want to share in the gratitude to a profession that allows peoples to be free through knowledge. And today I want to show all my gratitude and say, siempre presentes, to all the teachers who lost their lives to this devastating pandemic. We will never forget you. Forever presentes.
During the pandemic, the word solidarity made headlines around the world. We know that word. And clearly, if we are to beat this pandemic, we can only do it together. For us in the global union movement, this is nothing new. On the contrary, solidarity is one of our core values. In this spirit of global solidarity, our friend and ally, Sharon Burrow, the General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation and one-time executive board member of Education International, has a message for the educators of the world. Let's listen.
Happy International Teachers' Day. There is no doubt you can be very proud of the resilience, the tenacity, the commitment to quality education that indeed we have seen from all educators around the world throughout the pandemic. We already knew that the teaching service was indispensable to the lives of people everywhere, to the educational opportunities, to the opportunity for the foundations of education for a secure future. But COVID-19 showed us just what essential workers can do. When you couldn't go to schools physically, you transferred lessons online. You didn't let students, wherever it was possible, be isolated from the connectivity of being associated with their classrooms, with education, but also from the connections as human beings with each other. But of course, people are very anxious about the loss of teaching hours, the loss of the physical support that schools provide for children, for older students, and for communities. We know that we have to find ways to continue to build resilience, even as we hope for a return to greater normalcy. But I want to pay tribute to you as essential workers everywhere. I think the world has recognised finally that without teachers, without healthcare workers, without other essential service workers, the majority of whom are women, then our world can't continue. You've continued to provide services even as your own lives were at risk, even as you've seen your colleagues fall sick, as you've lost members of the teaching profession to this insidious pandemic. COVID-19 is a disaster for the world. The social and the economic impact, the impact on individuals and on communities has been too dramatic to even think about the cost. But we know with your strength, with your commitment, with your tenacity, then education is in good hands. I know that you believe that you can't just indeed be appreciated, that you need to be recognised and you need to be valued. And I can tell you the ITUC family stands firmly beside you. Decent work, just wages, safe and productive working conditions. You deserve to be valued in all ways possible so you can indeed continue to serve the quality education that our students everywhere are entitled to. Thank you and solidarity.
Solidarity to you, Sharon. Thank you. You mentioned decent work, occupational health and safety. These are long been a challenge and part of the core mission of the International Labor Organization, particularly right now, with workers all over the world on the front lines facing the challenges of COVID. With us now, we have Guy Ryder, who's the Director General of the International Labor Organization, and he has a special message for the world's educators.
Teachers are an essential part in all of our lives and in every one of our societies, and this has never been clearer than during the COVID-19 crisis. Teachers played a critical role in keeping education open for millions of students worldwide, and that required enormous sacrifices. Teachers had to take on additional workloads. They had to master new technologies for distance learning and to prepare new lessons. And when teaching face-to-face, their chances of contracting the virus, of course, increased. All of this on top of family and other responsibilities, which became more challenging because of the pandemic. So let me pay tribute to these educators and their sacrifices. And in particular, let us remember those who lost their lives or who face a long road to recovery. What has happened to them is devastating to their families, to students, to schools, and to communities. But now, as glimmers of hope appear on the COVID-19 horizon, we must consider seriously the role, conditions, and place of teachers as recovery hopefully gathers momentum. There is growing worldwide consensus that we cannot continue to take for granted and undervalue all of those who carry out work that is so essential for our societies. And clearly, this includes all of those who work in education. In building back after the pandemic, teachers will certainly play a critical role, not just in getting education back on track, but in generating the skills our societies need to create a sustainable and resilient future. And for that, they need safe and secure working conditions, including access to personal protective equipment, training, testing, and psychosocial support. They need safe and manageable workloads and adequate social protection. And we need to give teachers training and support with new learning technologies. Access to those technologies must be equitable as well. Otherwise, we risk creating deeper learning divides than already exist. Teachers and other education workers must also have wages and working conditions that reflect this critical role. In other words, they must all have decent work. They must be involved in the rebuilding and the reform of educational systems, and this also means safeguarding their rights to organise and to be heard. Let's remember that no one is safe until everyone is safe. Protecting teachers also means ensuring equitable access to vaccines worldwide. This is the only way to contain the pandemic and to enable schools to reopen safely and fully. The ILO is committed to working with Education International to support teachers and to ensure decent and safe working conditions for them everywhere. Investment in teachers and in education and in lifelong learning is clearly an essential part of building forward to a better future.
Thank you, Guy. How I wish that education ministers all over the world are listening to these words from you and also from Sharon. I'd like to bring in my colleagues again, Lily and Mariam, and get some reflections on those messages that we just heard. Let's start with Lily, with you this time.
I think in this horrible few years now, it's been years that we've tried to social distance and sanitize and everything else. We've been feeling really alone. And so for me, the message that Sharon and Guy are sending us is you're not alone. That it's not just being creative in your own little school community and hoping that you can duct tape things together if you don't have what you need. They understand it is going to take resources. It is going to take something of governments to get everybody vaccinated, to get everybody the equitable resources they need for their students in this time. We're not alone. And again, to have Education International have partners like this who we can talk to directly is absolutely key in making sure that we come out of this better than we were when we went in.
Thank you very much, Lily. How about you, Mariam? Any reflections or thoughts?
Oui, parce que nous avons entendu des messages forts.
We heard strong messages from Sharon and Gary.
Des messages qui donnent espoir.
Messages full of
si
hope.
nous nous rappelons, l'éducation, nous avons dit, l'éducation est transversale.
That education is transversal.
Il a fallu que se battre pour que ça soit
and we had to struggle for that objective to be transversal.
Transversalité, l'ensemble des travailleurs.
And all the workers.
Je pense donc à la CSI.
Like
Mais
CSI.
Là où on discute du travail
those places where we discuss about decent work in ILO, for example.
Parce que nous devons avoir cette forte solidarité.
We need this strong solidarity
pour que l'éducation puisse
so
être
that education
une priorité.
becomes a first priority.
Aux autres problèmes.
Education is the solution to
Santé,
other problems like health and other sectors.
Donc,
so,
pour qu'on puisse avoir cette décence dans l'éducation,
if we want to have a decent education, decent working
la
conditions,
solidarité
I
de
think
ces
that
institutions-là
solidarity between
est
institutions
Et c'est pourquoi aujourd'hui,
is
nous
vital.
apprécions à leur juste valeur les messages des dirigeants que nous venons d'entendre.
And we need the support from the leaders
Appelons pour
we heard.
que la pression puisse être mise
And I
sur les
hope
gouvernements
that we'll be able to put pressure
pour un
on the
financement adéquat de l'éducation.
governments to
Parce
have
que la
a
COVID a mis à
proper
nu
funding of
nos
education.
systèmes éducatifs.
Because with COVID,
Et
we
en passant du
noticed
système de santé.
all the obstacles, all the problems that we
Sans
have in
un
the education
financement
system.
adéquat,
If we don't have the adequate funding,
malheureusement, les
then
enseignants,
unfortunately,
parce que
the
conscients et
teachers
voulant
who
remplir
are
leur
aware of the
devoir,
situation and they
prendre leurs
want to fulfill their
responsabilités,
obligations, they
vont
want to
devoir
take their
encore payer de lourds
responsibilities,
tributs.
but
Ce que
probably
nous ne
they will
pouvons
have to
pas
pay a
accepter.
heavy tribute again,
Et c'est
and we
pourquoi,
cannot
comme
accept that.
David, tu l'as dit en
As
introduisant,
David mentioned
cette
in the
solidarité
introduction, we need
de
solidarity
l'OIT, de la
with
CSI
ILO,
l'UNESCO. On a connu la recommandation OIT-UNESCO.
UNESCO, we know the recommendation of
d'aller,
UNESCO.
d'essayer d'atteindre ces recommandations, c'est comme si nous reculons.
We are walking backwards. We're not going forward. I think it's high time for those institutions to take into account the issue of education,
L'éducation soit à juste valeur,
so that we recognize the right value of education, and we also need high quality teachers. If we don't have high quality teachers, we don't have high quality education. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mariam.
So, colleagues, we have received so many tributes to teachers from all over the world. We wanted to share with you a few songs that are dedicated to the teachers themselves, from Canada to Mexico to Burkina Faso. Let's listen.
On ne choisit pas toujours la route, ni même le moment du départ. On n'efface pas toujours le doute, la vieille peur d'être en retard. Et la vie est si fragile. On ne choisit jamais de vieillir, on voudrait rêver un peu plus. La vie n'est pas faite pour mourir, on meurt souvent bien entendu, car la vie est si fragile. Est si fragile, est si fragile, est si fragile. On n'atteint pas toujours le but qu'on s'était fixé autrefois. On ne reçoit pas souvent son dû. La justice choisit où elle va, et la vie est si fragile. On est seulement ce que l'on peut, on est rarement ce que l'on croit. Et sitôt on se pense un Dieu, sitôt on reçoit une croix, car la vie est si fragile. Est si fragile, est si fragile, est si fragile, car le temps est là. Seule justice ici-bas, on est si fragile. On marche sur l'or ou sur l'argile, dépend de ce qu'on a reçu. On reste tout aussi fragile. Pourquoi donc se marcher déçu? Car la vie est si fragile, est si fragile, est si fragile.
Con cariño para todos los maestros de sus amigos los Chalpaquis. mucho orgullo le canto y lo expreso en mi canción, a quien me enseñó en la escuela y me dio la educación. Se merece mis respetos y toda mi admiración por la entrega y el esfuerzo que le da su vocación. Querido maestro, sembrador de la enseñanza, tu sabio conocimiento que combate la ignorancia. Querido maestro, el trabajo que realizas día con día hoy se refleja en muchos profesionistas. Sí, señor. Ser maestro no es tan fácil porque es una vocación, y si lo haces por un cheque es una equivocación. Tampoco el que sabe mucho, sino el que sabe enseñar, con amor y con paciencia hace tu mente brillar. Querido maestro, sembrador de la enseñanza, tu sabio conocimiento que combate la ignorancia. Querido maestro, el trabajo que realizas día con día hoy se refleja en muchos profesionistas. Con esta me despido, no se les vaya a olvidar, en sus manos tienen toda la responsabilidad de hacer buenos ciudadanos, que sean personas de bien. Por tu empeño, gran maestro, yo te quiero agradecer. Querido maestro, sembrador de la enseñanza, tu sabio conocimiento que combate la ignorancia. Querido maestro, el trabajo que realizas día con día hoy se refleja en muchos profesionistas.
Hommage aux enseignants, Youssoufa le Bourkine Bila. J'ai opté pour ces métiers si nobles et si exaltants, afin de transmettre le savoir à tous ces innocents. J'ai fait de l'éducation mon métier d'adoption, j'enseigne et j'éduque les futures générations. Je suis l'artisan de l'âme, le forgeron de l'esprit, le combattant de l'ignorance qui relève tous les défis. Je suis le miroir de la société, le flambeau qui illumine l'humanité. De mes consonnes et mes voyelles, je forme des intellectuels, je fais de tous ces innocents des citoyens modèles. À tous ces enseignants dont la passion demeure enseignée par vocation et de guider toute une nation vers la lumière sans hésitation. Enseignants de tous bords, je vous réitère mes félicitations. Enseigner, ce n'est pas du tout facile, car cela demande beaucoup de sacrifices, surtout quand on tient dans ses mains l'avenir de tous ces êtres fétiches. Il faut de la rigueur, de l'abnégation, du dévouement et avoir l'amour pour ses enfants. Nul ne peut être enseignant s'il n'a pas à la place du cœur un diamant. De Nathanaël, j'ai emprunté ces quelques vers afin de magnifier tous les éducateurs, qu'ils soient du primaire, du secondaire ou du supérieur. Soyez fiers de vous. Vous êtes la cheville ouvrière et les bâtisseurs de la nation. Médecins, magistrats, architectes, ingénieurs, chercheurs et décideurs, tous sont passés par vous. Soyez-en fiers, même si certains oublient aujourd'hui là où ils sont passés hier. À tous ces enseignants dont la passion demeure enseignée par vocation et de guider toute une nation vers la lumière sans hésitation. Enseignants de tous bords, je vous réitère mes félicitations. L'enseignant, c'est cet employé, parfois injurié, violenté et marginalisé, mais qui pour sa société est prêt à se sacrifier, apporter de la lumière dans les contrées les plus éloignées et souffrir pour son salaire qu'il a pourtant bien mérité. Il faut que des voix s'élèvent pour la valorisation de la fonction enseignante. Restaurer l'image de l'enseignant car il mérite plus que le respect et la considération. Il faut aussi assurer leur protection contre tous ces ennemis de la nation. Merci à tous ces acteurs, à la CNC, à tous ces syndicats qui se battent vaillamment afin d'offrir aux enseignants des meilleures conditions de vie et de travail. Ces enseignants dont la passion demeure enseignée par vocation et de guider toute une nation vers la lumière sans hésitation. Enseignants de tous bords, je vous réitère mes félicitations.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. And now we're going to go to another troubled spot in the world. Brazil has suffered terrible losses because of COVID-19, but so much of these tragic losses were preventable. They happened because of an irresponsible government going against science, going against common sense. And coming from the United States of America, I can tell you I understand what I'm talking about, and I am in total solidarity with our colleagues who have to fight against the ignorance of authorities in power who are supposed to protect them. Our members at CENTE want to share some of those names and faces of their friends and colleagues whom they've lost, but who will always be present in the hearts of families and students and colleagues across the country. Let's go to Brazil.
Hoje é o Dia Mundial do Docente.
Now is World Teachers Day, a day to pay tribute to a long fight of all those who fight during all their lives to use education as a great transformation tool, inclusion and hope for the future for thousands of lives, a day to celebrate those idealistic professionals who use their lives to prepare the future of children and youngsters and adults, that they sometimes forget to live their daily lives. Today is a way to pay tribute to the courage of these teachers, ladies and gentlemen, who fight hurdles in an education system that prefers darkness instead of the beacons of wisdom. Despite public policies, people still believe in the lies of some politicians. But today is also a day to recall those hundreds of educators that on behalf of this teaching mission, fighting on behalf of education, they have fallen victims of stress, of inhuman ordeals after being harassed and persecuted by authoritarian and backward governments, fighting with lousy conditions of work in public schools, and lastly, victims of the neglect of an inhuman government that uses public health as a political tool and lives 1 millions of Brazilians helpless and about to die when cure was being administered worldwide. Teachers, ladies and gentlemen, here, most revered, and to all teachers who have left us and became history, we pay tribute to them, and we are sure that their fight was not in vain. October 5th, Teachers' World Day. From CNTA, we pay tribute to them.
Really powerful, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Just briefly, I mean, for me, it's about the scale and the depth. Brazil is such a huge country. It's such an effect. But what about briefly, just a quick takeaway from both of you, Lily?
No hay palabras.
No hay palabras.
No, there are no words. That scroll was probably a small percentage of how many people they've lost in Brazil. Even amongst our own members, we don't have all the names. Imagine if we had this worldwide, how long it would take to just look at those names. Nobody understands how big this is until you see the individual names.
And their faces, yeah, absolutely. It's like rolling the credits. You know, it's like credits that keep going on, and they deserve to have.
Yeah.
And Mariam, briefly, just a reaction.
Oui, très difficile.
Yeah.
Très difficile.
Yes, it's very difficult. It's really painful. I would like to say
les responsabilités de certaines autorités
those authorities were just irresponsible, which led to so many losses. They refused to admit the existence of COVID.
Right now,
so we wish and we hope that our colleagues rest in peace, but we have to keep mobilized.
And I think right now, I think what we're going to do is, Miriam, we're going to come to your region, and we're going to ask you to maybe present and introduce our next tributes. Would you do that for us, please?
Oui, merci encore.
Yes, thank you, Africa. We know that the pandemic had a devastating effect in Africa, all over the places on the continents. Thousands of teachers lost their lives, leaving behind them families, school communities, and trade unions with broken heart. Our members and friends from Zambia lost very important trade union members. The trade union of basic education in Zambia lost his president. Felix was his name. And the National Trade Union in Zambia lost the human resources director, Oscar Kabalo. The trade union of Lesotho teachers lost the general secretary, Mapitso Mulai. Educators in Rwanda lost many colleagues, and one of the leaders, our colleague Venust, teacher and treasurer. So we lost colleagues, and now we want to pay tribute to those who lost their lives, and we want to continue with their legacy. Let's have a look at them.
Antusa, beyond games, there are other issues, other aspects that are incorporated in this year's Antusa.
I'm Kakunta Kabika, Director in charge of Public and International Relations with the Basic Education Teachers Union of Zambia. We want to join the rest of Africa in paying tribute to the men and women who succumbed to the deadly outbreak of COVID-19, and we lost them due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. For us as Basic Education Teachers Union of Zambia, we lost a leader in the name of Mr. Felix Wakembe, who was president of the Basic Education Teachers Union of Zambia, who died this year on the 31st of January 2021 and was put to rest 3 days after his demise. We want to indicate that COVID-19 is real, and a good number of teachers in Zambia have been lost through the deadly disease of COVID-19. We lost Mr. Wakembe, who started his trade union work in the northwestern province of Zambia and rose through ranks until to the level where he became president of the Basic Education Teachers Union of Zambia, which is the biggest teacher trade union movement in the country. Mr. Wakembe played a critical role in working around the improvement of the conditions of service for teachers. He participated in all global engagements through the Education International as president of the Basic Education Teachers Union of Zambia, but he was not spared from the COVID-19 disease. And in the course of duty, where he worked as a teacher and as an education administrator in Northwestern Province, and to be precise, in Maninga District as District Education Standards Officer, he got caught up with the disease of COVID-19. We want to indicate that the trade union movement in the country has lost a gallant man. They have lost a seasoned leader. Betus has lost a unifier, and the teaching profession at large in the country has lost a leader who could say things the way they are and represent the teachers without fear or favor. We will live to remember the courage that Mr. Felix Wachembe took in fighting for the rights of workers in this country. We can only say that COVID-19 is real and Africa has not been spared, and together we need to continue to fight so that our governments should be able to ensure that teachers in this country and globally are provided with protective equipment to ensure that our teachers should not continue to die from COVID-19. It is the responsibility of the employer to make sure that all protective equipment which our teachers can use to protect themselves from COVID-19 are provided to them without fail. And it's only when we do that that we are going to be able to fight the spread of COVID-19 together. Farewell, Felix, you did your part, but the harsh hand of COVID-19 took your life when Betus and the teaching profession at large needed you most. We will miss you, and we know that you did your part, you fought your fight, and to us, we remain indebted to the great work that Mr. Felix Wachembe did in this great nation, in the teaching profession, and in the profession at large globally. We thank you, and may God bless all those that have gone due to COVID-19, and we pray that their families may be protected and that God should continue to protect the teaching profession.
The result di a tswa he di results tsena ha di la tsa bontsha ka nnete mme mapitso e na le cancer ya letswele ya ba tshepong e go fegela sepeleng sa Botshabelo so thwenge oncology clinic ya oncology clinic yona e re fegela mme mapitso kwana hospital Bloemfontein mme ha ke re la go hore o na ka lokile ka April ya ba o fa date ya 29 tsa July go rata tsoga thusa kwana hospital sa Bloemfontein.
Zanut lost a gallant man, a hard worker, a committed unionist, a labor leader, a gentleman of all time, Oster Kalalo. He was a hard worker indeed. The time he left us and died, he was the director, human resource. He joined Zanut headquarters as director workers education, and he worked hard. He traveled locally and abroad, and he connected the Zambia National Union of Teachers within the country and outside the country, and brought massive investment, massive knowledge to the workers of Zanut. And at the same time, he created a system of negotiations, working together with other labor movements, improving the conditions and service of the workers. And not only that, he also worked hard to make sure that the teacher unions in Zambia are merged. And the time of trying to merge, he worked hard together with other international labor movements like SATU, South Africa Democratic Teacher Union, Education Union Norway, and Education International Africa, as well as Education International. All these worked tirelessly connecting to make sure that the union in Zambia merged. It's sad that he left us without maybe achieving, but the progress which has been made has a great record that it is his input which has brought us this far. And we look forward to the success of the merger, in which he longed to see even before he left us. For us as a union, we have lost a man who unified us, a man who was of the people, a man who had a heart for labor movement. May his soul rest in peace and comfort the family even in this trying time. We have left a gap so difficult to fill. May his soul rest in peace.
Brother Hakizimana Venusti will always remembered as Synodic National Treasurer, a long-term teacher, especially in ECD. His contribution to quality education and trade union development will always remembered.
Nous, membres du syndicat Synodic, nous rendons hommage au défunt Hakizimana Venusti qui est mort du Covid-19. Il a contribué au développement de la femme au sein du Synodic. Ses actes de bravoure, sa sociabilité seront toujours marqués dans nos cœurs.
Late comrade Hakizimana, who passed away of COVID-19, was socially sensitive. He tirelessly strove for the welfare of the teacher. His outstanding acts will remain in our hearts.
These are just a few of the many memories, tributes, and memorial services that we've been receiving right across the world. Unions have been remembering and honoring the colleagues that they've lost since the beginning of the pandemic in many different kinds of ways. In Hungary, the Democratic Union of Teachers paid tribute by laying flowers and dedicating a song to their friends and colleagues who passed away, and we'll hear that. And then after that, we'll fly all the way to Japan to hear a message from Brother Shimizu, who's the president of the Japan Teachers Union. The past 18 months have been very challenging in Asia Pacific. In addition to the pandemic, the region has seen totalitarian regimes arise and democracies crumble. Now more than ever, our solidarity and union movement is just essential.
皆さんこんにちは。日教組委員長 EI 副会長の清水です。今日は世界教員の日、おめでとうございます。改めて皆さんとの連帯を確認する日でもあります。しかしながら新型コロナウイルス感染症によって私たちの仲間である教職員、そして子どもたちがたくさん亡くなってしまいました。私たちのアジア太平洋地域ではミャンマー、アフガニスタン、香港などなど厳しい状況に置かれ、人権や労働組合権の侵害など民主主義が危機にさらされています。この日本でもコロナの影響は大きく見られます。パンデミック前から多忙であった教職員の仕事量がますます増え、そのために過労で倒れている仲間がいます。日教組では今月末に教育祭を開催し、学校園等で教育の時間中、活動中、またそれらが原因と思われることで亡くなられた方、人命救助や不慮の災害、事故等によって亡くなられた方を偲ぶ機会を持ちます。我々が直面する課題は山積していますが、私たちには世界中に EI の仲間がいます。残念ながらパンデミックのために対面で集まることはできません。しかし、ウェブの会議であっても画面を通じて顔を合わせ、心を込めて言葉を伝えましょう。運動を語り合いましょう。ハートトゥハートの組合活動、つまり腹を割っての話し合いです。そのことが組織の拡大、強化につながっていくと考えます。ソリダリティ。
Solidarité, oui.
Yes, yes, solidarity. Dear colleagues,
Le deuil nous laisse souvent figés dans le temps.
we are
Alors que
blocked
nous
in
subissons des pertes
time
aussi terribles,
while we
il
are
nous est
undergoing
difficile de nous
terrible.
réconcilier avec l'espace vide
We have this
que
morning
nos amis et
work.
collègues
We
ont
lost
laissé derrière.
colleagues, we lost
C'est un
friends.
sentiment que nous partageons tous,
But this is a feeling
au-delà
we
des
can
frontières,
share
au-delà des continents.
further than continents,
Nous allons
further
maintenant
than
aller au
borders.
Sénégal
Now, I would
pour
like to take
entendre
you
un
to
poème
Senegal,
qui met en mots ce sentiment.
and we're going to
Écoutons le professeur
listen
Ibrahim Traoré
to a
de
poem
l'Union démocratique des enseignantes et
from
des
the
enseignants du
Democratic
Sénégal.
Union of Teachers
Écoutons
of
ensemble.
Senegal. Senegal has the floor. In these days of eclipse and bitterness never failed, Lord, when you deprive us of these inexhaustible springs, languor assails me and teaches me the improbable. I rush into the abyss and ask, why did I leave? And someone would have answered me, fate grabs whoever it wants. In the boredom or the quietude, the watchword was a vow to be useful, vow to serve with dignity in spite of all adversity. We have been humble, imbued with your only attitude which beyond your person transcends magnitudes. This conscious mass, dependent on a conscientious imprint, radiant with righteousness, has succumbed silently under the sad gaze of its companions with frank regret. Cursed pandemic, enemy of hope, thy presence is but a slush and a torrent of regrets, not a providence nourishing hope. You bring us to the point of death, yet you are only a creature. But for those who know how to observe, your death is not near. What a shame! The friends who have left me, these fresh souls, like every muse, inspired me with tact and righteousness. This suddenly conceived elegy is the means by which I honor the sempiternal finesse of your fighting and fraternal spirits, who, in the face of the heavenly bliss, have their place above.
We shall overcome, my sisters. We
Yes.
shall overcome, huh?
Overcome, yes.
I feel a little overcome myself, I have to say, at this point in this tribute. You know, it's always hard because you're trying to give the size and the span and the scope and the significance of human lives, their contributions everywhere, collectively, in a meaningful way that pays tribute to them, but at the same time celebrates their contributions in their lives. And that's why we chose présente, as a way to have them be present with us and to remember them and to build on their contributions and what they've taught us. And I really feel like that's what this has been for me. And I'm just so pleased that both of you could be with me and with all of us in this very special World Teachers Day tribute. So I just wanted to invite you both, just briefly share some concluding remarks, some thoughts on what this means and what you take away from this. Let's start with you, Lily.
Okay. I'll apologize. I know this is a celebration. I've cried through the whole thing.
That's okay.
No one's going to want to celebrate with me anymore. And I don't do that to bring us down. I am overwhelmed. I think we're all still going through a type of trauma at this incredible loss and what this world has been up against. And we have to understand, though, if we watch these videos, if we listen to the messages of our colleagues, we have to understand the injustice, the inequities, the tragedies in our schools and our communities, our entire countries were not caused by the pandemic. Those inequities were exacerbated. They were made worse, but they've always existed. Correct. So when I hear one of my colleagues say, "Oh, I can't wait for the pandemic to be over and we can finally get back to normal," I get a little worried, because if we're satisfied with going back to normal, back to what we had, then we've failed. The way things were for so many students, so many educators, so many families was never good enough. And if we accept the continuing inequities as just normal, then we will become complacent. We'll blind ourselves to the injustice of global inequality that in so many ways is a more serious killer than any pandemic we could imagine. So let the lives of those whom we honored today fill us with purpose. This is World Teacher Day. Let those of us who teach remember that we have an awesome responsibility, not only to our students, but to the world in which we are preparing them to live. And so, my fellow educators, teachers, the world needs us. Today, you heard powerful stories, but I'm going to remind you, you have your own powerful story. I know that. Let the world hear you. Let the world know of the creativity and the sacrifice and the courage of teachers today, and let the world know why they should be proud of us and why we should honor those who were lost and celebrate those who continue in the world's most important work. David, thank you so much. Miriam, it's been an honor to present with you today. This has been a powerful celebration of World Teacher Day. May we always be present.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you.
Thank you.
Miriam, some closing thoughts.
Oui, David. Une célébration spéciale.
Yes, that was a very special celebration, very strong in emotions, because we had videos, we had messages, we had poems, we had songs from many parts of the world, and they came from the heart,
dans
And
notre
that
conviction,
makes us stronger
la noblesse de notre
in
profession,
the idea that we have a noble
notre conviction,
profession.
notre engagement pour
We are convinced,
l'éducation.
we are committed,
Nous avons
we are
honoré
involved.
et dédié ce jour
So we
à nos
dedicated the
collègues et
day
camarades disparus.
to our colleagues who
Mais il
died,
faut le
who
dire, ils
disappeared,
resteront toujours
but they will
à
remain
jamais
forever and
dans nos
forever
cœurs.
in our hearts.
Leur perte ne sera pas vaine.
Their
Leur perte
loss
nous motive
won't be vain.
davantage.
Their loss is a
Nous sommes fiers
motivation.
de notre profession,
We are proud of our profession,
mais nous sommes aussi conscients
but we are
des
also
défis et
aware
des enjeux
of the challenges,
qui ont pour
the
nom
difficulties,
déprofessionnalisation,
such as
privatisation, marchandisation,
privatization, precarity,
autres.
among others.
Aussi, nous ferons face.
We will have to face
Nous nous engageons et appelons à la
difficulties,
mobilisation
but we
de
want to
toutes et
call
tous
for
dans nos pays
mobilizing
respectifs
everybody
pour
in the
amener
different
les
countries
gouvernements à faire ce
so
que nous
that
voulons
the
qu'ils fassent,
governments do
qu'ils
what we want
respectent
them to
le
do.
rôle régalien
They have
qui est
to
d'assurer une éducation de qualité,
ensure a quality education.
qu'ils respectent les engagements
They
pris
have
en
to
2015
respect the
pour
commitments
une
of
éducation publique de
2015
qualité pour
for a
tous à
public
l'horizon
quality
2030.
public education in 2030.
Collègues, la COVID-19
My dear
est encore là,
colleagues,
hélas.
COVID-19 is still
Nous
there,
restons vigilants,
but
mais
we
nous
stay
exigeons que des
vigilant, but
protocoles
we
sanitaires
want
rigoureux soient
rigorous,
mis en œuvre
healthy protocols. We
pour que
want those protocols to be implemented
continue
so that education
sans aucune
goes
perte
on
en vie humaine.
with no human lives
Les
losses.
enseignants ont payé un lourd tribut.
Teacher
et ça
paid a
suffit.
heavy tribute, and that's
Ça
enough.
suffit.
It's enough.
Je voudrais vous remercier,
Thank you,
David et Lily. Ça a été un
David,
grand plaisir
Lily. It was
de
my
partager
pleasure
cette
to
modération avec
share
vous pour
this
célébrer
meeting,
nos disparus,
this
mais
celebration
l'ensemble des
of
enseignants
the beloved
qui vont
ones we
continuer le
lost,
combat.
but also
Merci.
the existing teachers who will continue the struggle.
And
Thank
just
you.
building on what you both said, I want to remind everyone that our teacher memorial website will be up and alive for a very long time. So we do want to encourage those of you who have not yet shared tributes or would like to go on to the teacher tribute website and maybe say a few words about somebody who's there. I want to encourage you to do that. I also want to say that we cannot let this moment go by without talking about the fact that vaccine equity is the inequity of our time right now in terms of our focus in making sure that the entire world gets vaccinated, because as Guy said, no one's safe until everybody's safe. And those that we've lost, the great majority, were not vaccinated. And we got to remember that. Colleagues, we're going to conclude our tribute now with a message of hope and resilience. This is going to come from our colleagues in Argentina, where they've suffered enormous losses during the pandemic, but it's always, they find strength in their solidarity and in their community. So here is este abrazo, this hug, a big Latin American hug from the teachers in Cetera, Argentina, and really from all of us to all our colleagues in every corner of the world. Thank you.
Estamos parte de los arbolitos, queremos homenajear a todos los docentes y las docentes que han fallecido en esta pandemia, así que desde la Internacional Docente va un abrazo enorme y este homenaje. Fuerza.
Un cuento que no terminaba, el futuro nos traicionaba, tanto tiempo sin creer, creímos no creer en nada.
esa patria grande que seguimos soñando, que hace falta.